Thanksgiving Eve, 5:47 in the morning, frost thick on the tractor seat. I pulled on my work gloves, but the cold still bit through to the bone. The 57 John Deere coughed twice before the diesel caught, black smoke puffing into frozen air, crows called from the fence line, wood smoke curled from the chimney where Linda had the stove going. My phone buzzed, all day shopping with the girls, back late, don't wait up. I stared at that message, shopping. Day before Thanksgiving, I opened to find my phone, just wanted to make sure the roads weren't icy where she was headed. The blue dot sat right on top of Webb Realty and Development, 3 hours already. Not the mall, not anywhere close. My hands went cold in a way that had nothing to do with November. I drove back to the house. Her car sat in the driveway. She hadn't left yet. "How was shopping?" I asked when I walked in. She jumped, closed her laptop fast. What? I held up my phone. Webb Realty, 3 hours. A business card fell from her coat pocket on the counter. Curtis Webb, real estate developer. Through the kitchen window, I could see an orange survey stake on our fence line. She grabbed her purse. "We need to talk, but not here." "Then where?" I said. "His office?" She didn't answer, just stood there with her purse clutched to her chest, looking everywhere except at me. Outside, the tractor was still idling. I could hear it through the walls, that steady diesel rumble I'd known for 43 years, the sound of every morning since my father handed me the keys. "Sit down," I said. "Hal, sit." She lowered herself into the kitchen chair, her hands twisted together in her lap. I stayed standing, kept my voice level. A man doesn't yell when his world's coming apart. He gets real quiet. "How long?" "How long what?" "Don't." I pulled out the chair across from her. The legs scraped against the floor. "How long have you been meeting with him?" She looked at the table. 2 months, maybe 3. 3 months. Fall harvest. All those days she said she was visiting her sister, shopping, doctor's appointments. I'd believed every word. "What's he selling you?" "He's not." She stopped, started again. "He showed me opportunities, options we have." Options. "Hal, this farm is sitting on $3.2 million. Do you understand that? We could sell, retire, somewhere warm. Florida, Arizona, no more winters, no more—" She gestured at the window, at the frozen fields beyond. "No more of this." The coffee maker gurgled behind me, finishing its cycle. Linda had set it to brew before I even woke up. She'd done that every morning for 45 years. The smell of it filled the kitchen, bitter, strong, familiar. "This is our home," I said. "This is 4 walls and a mortgage we paid off a decade ago." Her voice cracked. "This is you, leaving at dawn and coming back after dark, smelling like diesel and hay. This is me sitting here alone, every single day, watching that same road, waiting for someone to drive down it who isn't you." I leaned back. The chair creaked under my weight. "You never said." "I've been saying it for years. You just don't listen." Maybe that was true. Maybe I'd been so busy holding on to this place I forgot to hold on to her, but that didn't change what she'd done, didn't make it right. "Those survey stakes on the fence line," I said. "I thought it was Mitchum's crew marking his property." She went pale. "But it's not, is it? Hal, they're marking ours." I stood up, walked to the window. 3 orange flags bright against the white frost. I could see them clear from here. "He's already surveying our land, already planning what he's going to do with it once you give it to him. Once we give it to him, together." I turned around. "I never agreed to anything." "You never agree to anything." She stood too, voice rising. "You never want to talk about the future. You just want to keep doing what you've always done, pretending we can farm this place forever, like it's still 1948. My grandfather cleared this land with a mule and a plow. Your grandfather's been dead for 30 years. The words hung there, true and cruel at the same time. My phone rang. Tommy's picture lit up the screen, my grandson, 8 years old, gap-toothed smile. I answered. "Grandpa, are you coming for Thanksgiving tomorrow?" Linda was watching me. Her expression shifted, something like guilt creeping in. "Wouldn't miss it, bud." "Can I drive the tractor again?" "If your mom says it's okay." "She will. See you tomorrow." He hung up before I could say goodbye. I set the phone down on the counter, next to Curtis Webb's business card. Picked up the card, expensive stock, embossed lettering, Webb Realty and Development, building tomorrow's communities. "What did you promise him?" I asked. Nothing. We just talked. 3 months of talking. What does he know about our finances? About the deed? About... I stopped. Felt something cold settle in my chest. Linda, what did you sign? Nothing. What did you sign? She looked away. He said he needed something to show potential buyers, to prove we were serious about selling, so I signed a letter of intent. That's all. Just a letter saying we were interested. We. I set the card down. You keep saying we, but I didn't sign anything. I didn't talk to him. I didn't agree to any of this. Because you'd never agree. You'd rather die in that barn than admit it's time to let go. This land isn't for sale. It's not just your decision anymore. Her face was red now, tears starting. I've given you 45 years, Hal. 45 winters on this frozen hill. I've earned a say in what happens next. The tractor outside shut off. Must have run out of fuel or maybe just died on its own. The silence rushed in. Linda grabbed her coat off the hook by the door. I'm going to Betty's. We'll talk when you've calmed down. She left. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the dishes in the cabinet. I stood there in the quiet kitchen, wood smoke smell from the stove mixing with coffee, and looked out at those orange survey stakes on my fence line. Not Mitchum's property markers, mine. I didn't sleep, just sat at the kitchen table until the sun came up, watching those orange stakes through the window. When dawn finally broke, I made fresh coffee and called First National Bank. Mr. Brennan, the receptionist said, surprised. We weren't expecting you today. Need to talk to Teague about refinancing my equipment loan. A pause. Let me check his schedule. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Dale Teague's office. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh white. Fake wood paneling on the walls. Burnt coffee smell from the pot in the corner. Probably been sitting there since yesterday. Teague shuffled papers on his desk. Wouldn't look at me directly. Subais, I said. Equipment loan. I'm thinking about upgrading the baler. Maybe... Hal. He set the papers down. His keyboard clicked as he pulled up my account. Before we discuss new financing, I need to ask about the other matter. What other matter? He glanced at his office door. Glass walls. I could see the tellers outside, the customers in line. He lowered his voice anyway. The matter Mrs. Brennan discussed with us. My chest tightened. What did she discuss? More clicking. He turned his monitor so I couldn't see the screen. She came in 3 times over the past 2 months. Most recent visit was Monday, day before yesterday. Monday, the day she said she was shopping for Thanksgiving dinner. What did she want? Teague pulled a folder from his desk drawer, slid it across to me. She inquired about liquidation options, asked what the farm would appraise for, wanted to understand the process for selling agricultural property. He cleared his throat. I gave her some general information, that's all. I opened the folder. Property assessment, market analysis, comparable sales in the county, all printed out neat and official, First National Bank letterhead on every page, $3.2 million, that's what Linda had said. These papers confirmed it. She asked about anything else? The mortgage payoff status, account balances. She wanted to know exactly where you both stood financially. And you told her. Hal, she's your wife. Joint accounts. I didn't think... He stopped. Should I have thought differently? I closed the folder. The paper felt slick under my fingers. Expensive stock, like Curtis Webb's business card. Who else has she talked to besides you? I don't know, but... He hesitated. Curtis Webb was here last week. Came in to see Gerald upstairs about development financing. They were in that meeting for 2 hours. Gerald, the bank president, the one who approved the big commercial loans. Webb mentioned our property? Not to me, but I heard he's been buying up farms, converting them to housing developments. That new subdivision out past Mitchum's place? That used to be the old Cartwright farm. Webb bought it 18 months ago. I knew the Cartwright place. Good land. Old John Cartwright had worked it for 60 years before his wife died, and he moved to assisted living. Within 6 months, dozers had torn down the barn, the house, everything. Now it was cul-de-sacs and vinyl siding. The door chimed as someone entered the bank. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of winter, road salt and diesel exhaust. Is there anything else? Teague asked. About the equipment loan? No. I stood up. Thanks for your time. I drove home. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Not from cold this time. Linda's car was back in the driveway when I pulled in. I found her in the kitchen making lunch. Tomato soup, the smell of it filled the room, sweet and acidic. She'd set out 2 bowls. Hal, You went to the bank 3 times. She stopped stirring. The spoon clinked against the pot. You got market assessments, asked about liquidation, all behind my back. I was gathering information. For him? For us. She turned off the stove, so we could make an informed decision. I already made my decision. This farm isn't for sale. She set the spoon down hard. You don't get to make that decision alone. The hell I don't. My name's on the deed. Our name, and I have power of attorney. The words hit like a fist. I stared at her. What? She reached into her purse, pulled out a document, set it on the kitchen table between the soup bowls. You signed this 10 years ago, remember? When you had that health scare. We agreed I should be able to make decisions if something happened to you. I looked at the paper, my signature at the bottom, durable power of attorney, Linda Marie Brennan, attorney in fact. That was for medical decisions. It covers financial matters too. Read it. I read it. The legal language blurred together, but certain phrases jumped out. Authority to manage, sell, or dispose of real property, make decisions regarding financial assets, act in the principal's best interests. My throat felt tight. You're using this to sell the farm. Curtis says it's all legal. As long as I'm acting in good faith, making decisions I believe are best for both of us, Curtis says. I looked up at her. How much time have you spent with him? Really? She didn't answer. Linda. He's been very helpful, explaining our options, showing me what life could be like if we what? Sold out? Walked away from everything my family built? Your family, not mine. Her voice was quiet, deadly quiet. I married into this, but it was never really mine, was it? That's not. He's already had the land appraised, Hal. There are buyers interested, developers who want to build communities here. Young families, children, life. She picked up the soup spoon, set it back down. We could close in the spring, April, maybe May, be in Arizona by summer. Spring closing. She'd already planned it, already worked out the timeline. I grabbed my phone, called Jerry Mitchell, my lawyer friend. He answered on the 3rd ring, background noise of his office behind him. Jerry, that power of attorney I signed for Linda 10 years ago, can she use it to sell property? Papers rustled on his end. Depends on the language. Most POAs include real estate authority unless specifically excluded. When did you sign it? 2014. Hal, if it's broadly written, yeah, she probably can. You'd need to revoke it, but even then, if she's already initiated sale proceedings, you might be in contested territory. How contested? Lawyer up contested. Could get messy, could take months. I hung up, looked at Linda across the table. The soup was cooling between us, steam rising off it, going nowhere. Curtis filed preliminary paperwork last week, she said, just to get things moving, nothing final, but it started. Without telling me. Because you'd never agree. You'd rather stay here and freeze and die alone than admit it's time. This isn't about time. It's about... I stopped. Couldn't find the words. This is theft, Linda. Legal or not, this is you stealing my land. It's our land, and I'm tired of it owning us. She left the soup on the table, walked out. I heard her car start, heard her drive away. I sat there in the empty kitchen, the smell of tomatoes turning sour in the cooling pot, and understood. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't about another man. This was worse. She was selling everything out from under me, and the law might let her do it. I drove to Virgil's place. Didn't call ahead, just went. My brother's farm sits adjacent to mine. 200 acres he still works himself, despite being 72 and having a hip that gives him trouble when the weather turns. His truck was in the driveway, exhaust puffing white in the cold air, engine running, him sitting inside with the heat on. When I knocked on his window, he looked over, then shut off the truck and climbed out. Little early for visiting, he said. Linda's selling the farm. He went still. The hell she is. We went inside. His kitchen smelled like bacon grease and old coffee. The wood stove in the corner ticked as it heated up, cast iron warming. Virgil poured 2 cups from the pot on the counter, didn't ask if I wanted any, just set one in front of me and waited. I told him everything, the GPS, Curtis Webb, the power of attorney, the preliminary paperwork already filed. When I finished, Virgil sat quiet for a long moment. Outside, I could hear his cattle lowing in the barn. The sound carried through the walls, low and mournful. "She can't do that," he finally said. "Jerry says she can, says the POA probably gives her authority." "Then we fight it." "With what? Curtis has lawyers. The bank's backing him, and Linda—" My voice cracked. I stopped, pressed my palms against my eyes. 45 years, Virgil. I thought I knew her." "Maybe you did. Maybe she changed. People do that." He took a sip of coffee, grimaced. "This is older than I thought. Want me to make fresh?" "No." He set the cup down. The kitchen was warm now, heat from the stove filling the space. My coat was too heavy. I shrugged out of it. "Curtis came to see me," Virgil said. "Month ago, maybe 6 weeks. Real friendly. Said he was working with farmers in the area, helping them maximize their assets. That's how he put it, maximize, like we're a damn portfolio." "What did you tell him?" "Told him I'd die before I sold." Same as Dad would have said. Same as Grandpa. He leaned back in his chair. It creaked under his weight. He didn't like that answer. Got real quiet. Then he asked if I'd at least think about it, said he'd be in touch. "He contact you again?" "No, but now I'm thinking maybe he doesn't need to. Maybe he figured if he gets your place, mine's next. Surround me. Make me the last holdout." The stove ticked again. A log settled inside, sending up sparks. "I can't lose it," I said. "Tommy, you know he wants to farm. Asked me last week if he could drive the tractor at Thanksgiving. That boy's got it in him, Virgil. The love for it. What do I tell him if I let it go?" "You tell him his grandfather fought and lost." Virgil stood up, walked to the window. His property stretched out beyond, fence lines running to the horizon. "Dad used to say something, remember? When things got tight, when the bank was breathing down our necks in the 80s and half the farms around here went under." Said a lot of things. Said a Brennan never quits. Blood and dirt, that's what matters. Everything else is just noise. He turned around. "That's still true for you?" I looked at him. My older brother, gray hair, weathered face, hands scarred from 60 years of work. "Yeah, it's still true." "Then we dig in." He came back to the table. "Now, that power of attorney, she's using it for property decisions. But the original deed, the one Grandpa got when he bought the place in 48, that's ironclad, right?" "Should be." "Where's it kept?" I tried to remember. Dad had shown it to me once, years ago. Safe deposit box, I thought. Or maybe... I stopped. He said something once. About important papers. Said he kept them somewhere fireproof. Virgil's eyes narrowed. "The tractor." "What?" "The toolbox. On the 57 Deer. Dad used to keep things in there, wrapped in oilcloth, tucked behind the wrench set." He pointed at me. "Before you roll over, check that tractor. If the original deed's there, if it's got a clear chain of title, Curtis's paperwork might not mean a damn thing." I stood up. Hope, thin and fragile, started to flicker. "I'll check it." "You do that. And Hal?" He grabbed my shoulder. "This fight, you're not in it alone." The courthouse sat on Main Street, stone steps worn in the centers from 100 years of foot traffic. I climbed them slowly, feeling the cold through my boots. Inside, the marble floors echoed, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The clerk's office was on the second floor, past the courtroom where I'd served jury duty twice and attended my nephew's adoption hearing. Tom Westfield looked up when I walked in. We'd gone to school together, played baseball in the same summer league 40 years ago. His hair was mostly gone now, glasses perched on his nose. "Hal." He glanced at the empty office behind him. "This official business?" "Need to check on a filing." Something shifted in his expression. He came around the counter, pulled me toward the corner by the copy machine, spoke low. "You looking for anything specific?" "My property. Someone filed paperwork. I want to see it." He walked to his computer, typed, stared at the screen. Then he grabbed a sticky note, wrote down a number, and slid it across to me without a word. "Filing 2024-11-892. Requested at the front desk," he said. Normal voice now. "Public record." I took the sticky note. "Thanks." "Hal." He waited until I looked at him. "There have been others. Same pattern. Older farmers, same developer, all within the last 2 years." "How many?" "3 that I've seen, maybe more." He pushed his glasses up. "Nobody fought it." I requested the file at the front desk. The clerk, young woman I didn't know, brought it out 5 minutes later. I opened it standing right there. Quitclaim deed. Grantor, Harold James Brennan. Grantee, Web Development Holdings, LLC, dated November 2nd. My signature at the bottom, neat and official looking, except I'd never signed it. Filed November 8th, 6 days ago. While I was out checking fence lines and feeding cattle, Curtis Webb was at this courthouse filing paperwork that said I'd sold him my land. The marble floor felt unsteady under my feet. I gripped the counter. "Sir?" The clerk looked concerned. "Are you all right?" "I need a copy of this." She made one. I folded it, put it in my coat pocket, and walked out. Tom caught up with me on the steps outside. The wind had picked up, cold and sharp, clouds moving in from the west. "That deed," he said quietly. "The signature. You sign it?" "No," he nodded. "Thought not. Hal, you need a lawyer, today." "I know. And you need to move fast. Quitclaim filings have a quiet title period. Once that expires, how long? 90 days, usually. Then it's damn near impossible to contest. 90 days, 3 months, spring, just like Linda said. I drove home. The forged deed sat in my pocket like a stone. When I got there, I went straight to the barn, to the 57 deer sitting in the corner where it always sat, opened the toolbox. Inside, behind the wrenches and the socket set and the old rags stained with grease, I found a package wrapped in oilcloth. I pulled it out. My hands were shaking. The deed inside was dated July 12th, 1948. Andrew Brennan, purchaser, 180 acres, my grandfather's signature in faded ink, and stapled behind it another deed, 1979. Andrew to Robert Brennan, my father, and behind that, 1998, Robert to Harold James Brennan, me. An unbroken chain, the original deed passed down, hidden in a tractor toolbox for safekeeping. I stood there in the barn, diesel smell and hay dust in the air, and understood. Curtis had filed a forgery, but I had the real thing. Curtis Webb showed up 3 days later. I was in the barn, greasing the baler, when I heard a truck pull into the driveway. Not a work truck, something expensive, engine purring. I walked out, wiping my hands on a rag. Curtis climbed out of a black F-250, clean as a showroom model. He wore a North Face jacket and boots that had never seen mud. "Mr. Brennan," he smiled, extended his hand. I didn't take it. "Fair enough." He lowered his hand. "Mind if we talk? Just a few minutes." "Nothing to talk about." "I think there is." He reached into his truck, pulled out a rolled set of papers. "I'd like to show you something. The plans for the property. What we're envisioning." "Get off my land." "Hal. Can I call you Hal?" He unrolled the papers on his truck hood. Site plans, subdivision layouts, little boxes representing houses, cul-de-sacs, a retention pond. "This is going to be beautiful. Cedar Ridge Estates, 63 homes, young families, kids playing in the streets. It's exactly what this area needs." I looked at the plans. My barn was gone in them. The house, the fence lines I'd walked every morning for 40 years. All of it erased, replaced with those neat little boxes. "Linda wants this," Curtis said. "She understands the opportunity here. The chance to finally—" He stopped himself. "She deserves to be happy, don't you think? What she deserves is a husband who didn't ignore her for 45 years. I met his eyes. "But that doesn't give you the right to steal my land." "Steal?" He laughed, friendly, easy. "Hal, I'm not stealing anything. Your wife has legal authority. I've done my due diligence. My attorneys have reviewed everything. This is completely above board. My signature on that quit-claim deed is forged." His smile didn't waver. "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth." "Well," he rolled up the plans. "If you want to contest it, that's your right. But I should warn you, litigation is expensive. My firm has very good lawyers. And if you pursue harassment charges against me, defamation, interference with a legal contract—" He shrugged. "Those cases can drag on for years, cost hundreds of thousands, might lose the farm anyway, just in legal fees." The wind picked up. Cold air cut through my work coat. Curtis didn't seem to feel it. "I'm offering you a way out," he said. "Sign a voluntary sale agreement. I'll add $50,000 to the purchase price. A goodwill bonus. You and Linda split it, move somewhere warm, and this all ends quietly. No lawyers, no mess. No. Think about it. Really think." He climbed back into his truck. "I'll be in touch." He drove away. I stood in the driveway, watching his taillights disappear down the road, and felt something cold and heavy settle in my chest. Morning coffee at the diner was a ritual, had been for 20 years. Same booth, same time, same crowd. Farmers mostly, a few retired teachers, the guys from the grain elevator. We'd talk crops and weather and whose kid was doing what. I walked in at 7:30. The bell above the door chimed. The conversation stopped. Every head turned, then turned away. I sat down in my usual spot. Betty, Linda's sister, was 2 booths over with her husband Frank. She stared at me, then stood up and walked over. "You've got some nerve," she said. "Betty, 45 years my sister stood by you, cooked your meals, washed your clothes, kept that house running while you played farmer." Her voice carried through the whole diner. "And now, when she finally asks for something for herself, you're going to destroy her." "That's not—" She told me everything, how controlling you are, how you won't let her have any say, how you threatened her when she tried to discuss options. Betty's face was red. "You should be ashamed." I looked past her. The whole diner was watching, some faces sympathetic, most weren't. "Did she tell you about the forged signature?" I asked quietly. "She said you'd make up lies, said you'd try to paint her as the villain." Betty leaned down. "I know my sister. She's not a liar. But you? You'd say anything to keep control." She walked back to her booth. Frank wouldn't look at me. The waitress, Donna, worked there 15 years, came over with coffee, poured it without a word. The silence in the diner was thick enough to choke on. I left a 5 on the table and walked out. My truck was the only one in the parking lot. Everyone else had carpooled or they were still inside, waiting for me to leave so they could talk about me freely. I drove home. The road was empty, fields on either side, frozen and bare. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw them. Orange survey stakes, but not on the fence line anymore. Inside my property, scattered across the front field, a dozen of them, maybe more, and each one had a tag. I got out, walked over to the nearest stake. "Sold. Parcel 4, Lot 17. I walked to the next one. Parcel 4, Lot 18. He was dividing it, right now, while the legal contest was still pending. Curtis was so confident he'd win that he was already carving up my land into lots, numbering them, preparing them for sale. I pulled up one stake, then another. The ground was half frozen, fighting me. My hands burned with cold. I kept pulling. 20 stakes, 30. They were everywhere. By the time I'd pulled them all, I was sweating despite the cold. My back ached. My hands were raw. I threw the stakes in a pile by the barn, orange flags fluttering in the wind like surrender. My phone rang. "Virgil. You hear about the diner?" I was there. "Betty's telling everyone you're abusing Linda, financially controlling her. Half the town believes it." He paused. "Hal, this is bad." Through the kitchen window, I could see inside. The table where Linda and I used to eat breakfast. The stove where she'd made 45 years of meals. The life we'd built, or thought we'd built. Curtis's truck drove past on the road, slow. He waved. I didn't wave back. "Yeah," I said to Virgil. "It's bad." I spent the next 2 days at the library. The old one on Jefferson Street. Computers in the back, microfilm machines older than most of the staff. I started with obituaries. Went back 2 years, printed anything that mentioned farm sales or estate liquidations. The printer hummed and clacked, spitting out pages that smelled like hot toner. 4 names jumped out. John Cartwright, 81. Died 6 months after selling his farm. The obituary mentioned recent relocation to assisted living and survived by his loving wife Margaret, who preceded him in death. Ellen Vasquez, 74. Farm sold to pursue retirement opportunities. Dead 8 months later. Heart attack. Robert and Susan Chen, no relation that I could find, both in their 70s, sold their dairy operation after 50 years of service to the community. Obituary came 11 months after the sale. I cross-referenced with property records. Every single one sold to Web Development Holdings, LLC. The librarian, young woman, couldn't be more than 25, came over while I was printing the last batch. "Finding what you need?" "Yeah." I gathered the papers. "Thanks." "Those are sad." She nodded at the obituaries. I grew up on the Cartwright place. Before it was sold. My mom worked there when I was little. She paused. Mr. Cartwright didn't want to sell, but after his wife died, someone convinced him it was too much work, too much land for one old man. Who convinced him? Some developer. Real friendly guy. My mom said he visited every week, brought groceries, helped with paperwork. She shrugged. Then Mr. Cartwright moved to Pine View, and 6 months later he was gone. Mom said he died of a broken heart. I drove home with the papers on the passenger seat. The heater in my truck rattled, pushing warm air that smelled like dust and antifreeze. At home, I spread everything on the kitchen table. 4 farms, 4 elderly owners, all sold within the last 2 years. All to Curtis Webb. My phone rang, Tommy's number. Grandpa? Hey, bud. Mom says we can't come to the farm for Christmas. She says you and Grandma are fighting. His voice was small. Is it true? Is the farm being sold? I closed my eyes. Through the phone, I could hear cartoons in the background. Tommy's normal life. Still intact, still innocent. We're working on some things, I said. But I can still visit, right? You promised I could learn to drive the tractor when I'm bigger. You can still visit. Promise? Promise. After he hung up, I sat there with the papers spread in front of me and understood something. This wasn't just about me and Linda. It wasn't just about 45 years of marriage, or who was right or wrong. This was about Curtis Webb, running the same play he'd run 4 times before. Target elderly farmers, befriend lonely wives, exploit paperwork, get the land cheap, flip it for millions. And unless I stopped him, he'd do it again. I found the attorney, through Tom, at the courthouse. Sarah Chen, 31, took her bar exam 3 years ago, worked mostly pro bono cases out of a small office above the pharmacy on Main Street. The stairs up creaked under my weight, smelled like old wood and the pharmacy's hand soap below. Her office was one room, desk covered in folders, law books stacked on the floor. She looked up when I knocked. Mr. Brennan? Call me Hal. She cleared a chair for me. Tom said you needed help with a property dispute. I handed her the file, the quitclaim deed, the original 1948 deed from the tractor toolbox, the power of attorney Linda had used, the obituaries and property records I'd printed. She read through it all, didn't speak for 10 minutes, just read, made notes, flipped pages. Finally, she looked up. The signature on this quitclaim deed, it's yours? No. You're certain? I know my own signature. She tapped her pen against the desk. The POA is broad, very broad. In most cases, this would give your wife authority to execute property sales. But, she pointed at the quitclaim deed. This was filed November 8th. When did your wife first discuss selling with the bank? She met with them starting in September. Before the POA discussions began? I thought back. Linda had asked me to sign some papers in late October. Something about updating our estate plan. I'd signed without reading carefully, trusted her. The POA was executed October 25th, Sarah said, reading the document. But if she'd already initiated sale discussions in September, before she had authority, she made another note, that's fraud, or at the very least, bad faith execution of fiduciary duty. Can we stop it? Maybe. She pulled out a calendar. The quitclaim was filed November 8th, 90-day quiet title period. That puts us at, she counted, February 6th. After that, it becomes exponentially harder to contest. Less than 3 months. Less than 3 months. She looked at the obituaries. In this pattern, 4 other farms, same developer. You said 2 of these families had elderly members who died shortly after selling? All of them. Her jaw tightened. Mr. Brennan, Hal, I think your wife might be a victim here too. This Curtis Webb, he's not just a developer. He's targeting vulnerable people, finding their pressure points. She met my eyes. I'll take your case. No fee. But we need to move fast. What do you need from me? Everything. Bank records, correspondence, anything Curtis Webb gave your wife. And that original deed, she picked it up, held it to the light. This might be our ace. If we can prove unbroken chain of title, and we can prove the quitclaim was fraudulently executed, we void his filing entirely. I stood up. When do we start? Now. She pulled out a legal pad. Tell me everything, from the beginning, and don't leave anything out. The office window showed Main Street below. Christmas lights strung between the lampposts, people shopping, living normal lives. I sat back down and started talking. Sunday service. I hadn't missed one in 40 years, except when the roads were too bad to drive. I walked in through the side door, smell of old hymnals and lemon furniture polish. The pews were filling up, families settling in, kids fidgeting. Betty saw me first. She stood up from her pew, crossed the aisle. You have some nerve showing your face here. People turned. Conversation stopped. Betty, don't. Her voice carried to the back of the church. My sister is terrified of you. Terrified. You've controlled every aspect of her life for 45 years, and now that she's finally standing up for herself, you're trying to destroy her. Pastor Mills emerged from his office. Betty, please, this isn't the place. He's financially abusing her. Betty's face was red. He won't let her access their accounts. won't let her make decisions about their own property, and when she tried to plan for their future, he threatened her. That's not true, I said quietly. Linda told me everything. How you check her phone, how you question every purchase, how you made her feel like a prisoner on that farm. Betty stepped closer. You're a bully, Hal, and everyone here needs to know it. The organ prelude started, trying to restore order. Pastor Mills touched Betty's arm. Let's discuss this privately, after service. No, she shook him off. This man has hurt my sister for years. Someone needs to say it. I looked past her. Half the congregation was nodding. The other half looked uncomfortable, uncertain. Nobody spoke up for me. I signed a forged deed, I said. Ask your sister about that. You're lying to save face, Betty's voice cracked. That's what abusers do. They lie. I walked back out. The cold air hit me like a slap. Behind me the organ played on, and I could hear Betty crying, people comforting her. My truck was alone in the parking lot. I sat in it, hands on the steering wheel, and watched families file into the church through my rearview mirror. Curtis Webb's truck drove past slowly. He waved. I didn't wave back. Sarah called that afternoon. I was in the barn, checking the fence line where Curtis's survey crew had been. Boot prints in the mud, cigarette butts left behind. The smell of diesel hung in the air from their equipment. What? Curtis Webb had an assistant, woman named Jennifer Oakes. She quit 6 weeks ago. Papers rustled on Sarah's end. I tracked her down through LinkedIn. She agreed to talk. And she kept records, emails, documents, voice memos. Curtis has a system. Sarah's voice got tight. He targets elderly farmers, specifically ones whose spouses died recently or whose wives are isolated. He researches their financials, finds their vulnerabilities, then approaches the wives, promises them security, escape, a better life. My chest tightened. How many? Jennifer documented 7. Your farm makes 8. All in the past 3 years. 4 have already closed. The ones you found obituaries for. 3 are in process. 7 families, 7 farms. These 7, all following the same pattern. She has proof? Emails where Curtis refers to targets as low-hanging fruit. Voice memos where he's coaching his surveyor on how to plant stakes without the husband noticing. Messages to his lawyer about working the wife angle. Sarah paused. Hal, this is a conspiracy. Systematic fraud targeting vulnerable elderly people. Through the barn door, I could see my fields, the land my grandfather had cleared, the fence posts my father had set, the life I'd built, one day at a time, for 68 years. What do we do with it? I'm filing an emergency injunction tomorrow morning, restraining order preventing any sale, transfer, or development activity pending investigation, and I'm sending copies to the district attorney. Her voice hardened. Curtis Webb isn't just a bad businessman. He's a predator. Will the judge grant it? With this evidence? Yes. Jennifer's testimony alone would probably do it. But combined with your original deed, the forged signature, the pattern across multiple farms... She paused. We have him, Hal. We actually have him. I sat down on a hay bale. The barn was quiet except for wind through the gaps in the siding, a soft whistling sound that had been there my whole life. What about Linda? That's complicated. She signed documents, participated in meetings, but if we can prove Curtis manipulated her, exploited her isolation, she might be a victim too. Not innocent, but not the villain either. When's the hearing? I'm requesting emergency status. Could be as soon as this week. She hesitated. Hal, Curtis is going to fight this. He's got investors, contracts, money on the line. This won't be clean. Nothing about this has been clean. Are you ready for that? I looked out at the fields, at the tractor sitting where it had sat for 60 years, at the fence lines that had held through storms and droughts and everything else the world had thrown at them. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. After we hung up, I walked the property, all 180 acres. Took me 2 hours. The ground was starting to thaw in patches, mud season coming early, water pooled in the low spots, reflected gray sky. I found 3 more survey stakes Curtis's crew had planted, pulled them up, added them to the pile by the barn. When I got back to the house, there was a message on my machine. Tom from the courthouse. Hal, heard Sarah's filing tomorrow. Good. But you should know, Curtis filed something too. Motion to expedite the quiet title. He's trying to force the sale through before you can stop it. Hearing set for this Friday. 4 days. I stood in the kitchen, listening to Tom's voice echo in the empty house, and understood. This was it. 4 days until the showdown. Win or lose everything. I drove to Betty's house Wednesday evening. Linda had been staying there since Thanksgiving, almost 3 weeks now. The porch light was on, yellow against the dark. I could see movement through the window, shadows passing. Betty answered the door. She doesn't want to see you? I need to talk to her. 5 minutes. Haven't you done enough? Please. Betty stepped aside, but her jaw was set. I'm staying right here. Linda sat on the couch in the living room. She looked smaller somehow, thinner. Her hands were wrapped around a mug of tea, steam rising. The house smelled like chamomile and the gas fireplace in the corner. Linda. She looked up. Her eyes were red. Sarah's filing the injunction tomorrow, I said. I wanted you to know. So you're really doing this, taking me to court. I'm stopping a fraud. I'm your wife, Hal, not a fraud. Her voice broke. I'm the woman who stood by you for 45 years. Doesn't that count for anything? Betty moved closer, protective. I sat in the chair across from them. The gas fireplace hissed softly. Outside, a dog barked somewhere down the street. Curtis has done this before, I said. 7 other farms, same pattern. He targets elderly farmers, befriends their wives, manipulates them into selling, then flips the land for millions. That's not... Linda stopped, set down her tea. He was helping us. He was using you. You don't know that. His assistant kept records, emails where he called you an easy mark, voice memos where he talked about exploiting your isolation. I leaned forward. Linda, I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's true. She pressed her hands to her face. Her shoulders shook. Betty knelt beside her. Lynn, what's he talking about? Curtis. Linda's voice was muffled. He said he understood. Said he'd grown up on a farm too, knew how hard it was, how lonely. She lowered her hands. He showed me pictures, condos in Arizona, communities with pools and activities, places where people actually lived, not just survived. And you believed him. Yes, she stood up suddenly. Yes, I believed him, because you never listened. Never once in 45 years did you ask me if I was happy. If I wanted something different, you just assumed I'd be content being your silent partner on that frozen hill. The fireplace hissed again. Betty looked between us, uncertain now. I didn't know you were unhappy, I said quietly. Because you didn't look. Linda walked to the window. Do you know what it's like? Watching you leave every morning at dawn, coming back after dark, smelling like diesel and dirt, having entire conversations with you where you're thinking about fence lines or equipment or weather, never about us, never about me. You should have said something. I tried. She turned around. 1,000 times. But you never heard me. You only hear the land. The words hung there, true, in a way that made my chest hurt. Maybe you're right, I said. Maybe I loved the farm more than I loved you. Maybe I failed you in ways I can't even see. I stood up. But that doesn't make what Curtis did legal, and it doesn't make the forged signature go away. I didn't know about that. Her voice was small. I swear, Hal. He said the power of attorney covered everything, that it was all legitimate. Did you meet with him before you signed the POA? She looked away. Linda. September. He first approached me in September, said he'd been watching the area, thought our farm had potential. She wrapped her arms around herself. He was so kind. Listened to me talk about winters, about being alone, about feeling invisible. And you didn't tell me. Because I knew you'd shut it down, refused to even discuss it. She met my eyes. I wanted one thing, Hal. One decision that was mine. Is that so wrong? Not wrong, just... I stopped. It doesn't matter. What's done is done. Betty's phone rang. She stepped into the kitchen to answer it. The hearing's Friday, I said. Sarah's going to present evidence about Curtis's pattern, about the manipulation. You'll probably be called to testify. On which side? That's up to you. She sat back down. If I testify against Curtis, everyone will know. The whole town. They'll know anyway. And if I don't, then you're complicit in fraud. Betty came back in, phone still to her ear. Her face was pale. Linda, that was Curtis. He says if you testify tomorrow, he'll sue you for breach of contract. He says you signed agreements, made promises, he'll take everything. Linda looked at me, then at Betty, then down at her hands. I'm tired, she whispered. I'm so tired of all of this. I left them there, walked out into the cold. The air smelled like wood smoke from somebody's fireplace, mixing with the exhaust from my truck. Back home, Sarah and Virgil were waiting in my kitchen. Tom was there too, laptop open on the table. The overhead light cast harsh shadows. Jennifer sent more, Sarah said. She turned the laptop toward me. Email after email. Curtis to his lawyer, to his investors, to his surveyors. All of them clinical, calculating. One stood out. Target number 8, Brennan Farm. Wife is prime, isolated, resentful, desperate for change. Husband's a dinosaur, won't see it coming until papers are filed. ETA. Spring closing. He called you a dinosaur, Virgil muttered. Sarah pulled up another email. This one's to his banker. Quote, old fool won't know what hit him. By the time he lawyers up, we'll have quiet title. Then it's just a matter of waiting him out. Tom leaned back. That's premeditation. Clear fraud. And this, Sarah opened a voice memo. Curtis's voice, recorded in his truck. Just keep the stakes subtle. Don't want the husband catching on before the wife commits. Once she's in, he can't back out. Law's on our side if she's got POA. The recording stopped. The kitchen was silent except for the refrigerator humming. Judge Whitmore's hearing this? Virgil asked. Yes. He's fair. Tough, but fair. Sarah closed the laptop. We present this tomorrow, along with the original deed, the forged signature analysis, and Jennifer's testimony. Curtis is done. What about Linda? I asked. That depends on her. Sarah looked at me. If she testifies truthfully, admits he manipulated her, she might avoid charges. If she protects him, she shrugged. Then she's an accomplice. Virgil poured coffee. The pot was old, made that gurgling sound as it finished brewing. He handed me a cup. You ready for this? He asked. I thought about Linda in Betty's living room, about Curtis driving past my farm, waving, about Tommy asking if he could still visit. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. Tom gathered his laptop. I'll see you at the courthouse, 9 a.m. sharp. Sio. After they left, I sat alone in the kitchen. The house was quiet. No Linda making dinner, no sound of her moving through rooms, just me and the silence. Outside, an owl called. The furnace kicked on, warm air rushing through the vents. Tomorrow we'd find out if 45 years of work could be stolen with a signature, or if some things were worth fighting for after all. The courthouse steps were slick with morning frost. I climbed them slowly, Virgil beside me, Sarah ahead with her briefcase. The sun was just coming up, casting long shadows across the stone. Inside, marble floors echoed with footsteps, the smell of floor wax and old wood. People in suits, lawyers mostly, talking in low voices. Tom stood by the courtroom doors. Full house, he said quietly. Word got around. I looked through the door windows. Every seat filled. Betty was there, front row, half the church congregation. Curtis sat at the defendant's table with 2 lawyers in expensive suits. Linda was in the back, alone. All rise. Judge Whitmore entered, 70-something, gray hair, reading glasses hanging on a chain. He'd been on the bench for 30 years. Fair, but tough, like Virgil said. We sat. The courtroom settled. This is an emergency hearing, Whitmore began, regarding property at 4847 County Road 16, currently owned by Harold James Brennan, Ms. Chen, you filed the injunction. Proceed. Sarah stood. Your Honor, this case involves systematic fraud targeting elderly farmers. My client, Mr. Brennan, discovered that a quitclaim deed was filed without his knowledge or consent using a forged signature. The developer, Mr. Curtis Webb, has employed this same scheme against at least 7 other families in this county. Curtis's lawyer stood. Objection. Speculation and character assassination. Mrs. Brennan holds legal power of attorney, which she obtained under false pretenses, Sarah cut in, and which was executed after Mr. Webb had already initiated contact and discussions about the property. Whitmore raised his hand. I'll hear the evidence. Ms. Chen, call your first witness. The plaintiff, Harold Brennan. I walked to the stand. The Bible was cold under my palm when I swore in. Sarah approached. Mr. Brennan, when did you first learn your property was being sold? November 23rd, day before Thanksgiving. And had you authorized this sale? No. Had you signed any documents agreeing to sell? No. She pulled out the quitclaim deed. This is filing 2024-11-892. Is this your signature? I looked at it. No, ma'am. You're certain? I know my own signature. Curtis's lawyer stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Brennan holds valid power of attorney, granting her authority. When was that POA executed? Sarah asked. Curtis's lawyer shuffled papers. October 25th. And when did Mr. Webb first contact Mrs. Brennan about selling the property? Silence. I'll answer, Sarah said. September 12th. Bank records show Mrs. Brennan met with Curtis Webb at First National Bank on that date, more than 6 weeks before the power of attorney was executed. She had no legal authority at that time. Murmurs in the courtroom. Whitmore banged his gavel once. Sarah pulled out more documents. Furthermore, I have testimony from 3 witnesses, the bank officer, a surveyor, and Mr. Webb's former assistant, all confirming that Mr. Webb initiated this sale before Mrs. Brennan had any legal standing to discuss it. Your Honor, Curtis's lawyer tried again. Even if the timeline is... Let her finish, Whitmore said. Sarah approached the bench. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce evidence of a pattern. Mr. Webb has used this same scheme on 7 other properties in the past 3 years. She handed him a folder. 4 of those families have since lost their homes. 4 elderly owners died within a year of selling. The courtroom went silent. Whitmore read through the documents. His jaw tightened. Ms. Chen, call your next witness. Jennifer Oakes. A woman in her 30s walked to the stand, nervous but determined. She worked for Curtis for 2 years, she said, kept records because something felt wrong. Can you describe Mr. Webb's business model? Sarah asked. Jennifer's hands shook slightly. He targets elderly farmers, specifically ones whose wives are isolated or unhappy. He researches their finances, their family situations, their vulnerabilities. Then he approaches the wives privately, promises them security, escape, a better life. Did he use those exact words? Yes, he called it working the wife angle. She glanced at Curtis. He kept a list, called them low-hanging fruit. More murmurs. Betty was staring at Curtis now, face pale. Sarah pulled up her laptop. Your Honor, I have emails and voice recordings Ms. Oakes provided. May I play one? Proceed. Curtis's voice filled the courtroom, recorded in his truck, casual and cold. Brennan Farm's perfect. Wife's desperate. Been on that frozen hill for 40 years. Husband barely talks to her. Show her some condos, some sunshine. She'll sign anything. Just need to plant the stakes subtle. Don't want the old man catching on before she commits. Linda stood up in the back. Her hand was over her mouth. The recording continued. Once she's got POA, we're golden. File the quitclaim, wait out the quiet title. Done. Old fool won't know what hit him until spring closing. The courtroom erupted. Whitmore banged his gavel. Order! Curtis's face was red. His lawyers were whispering urgently. Sarah wasn't done. She pulled out another document. Your Honor, this is an email from Mr. Webb to his investors dated November 10th, 2 days after he filed the forged deed. She read aloud. Target acquired. Brennan Farm locked in. Project Cedar Ridge moving to development phase. ROI estimated at 400%. Old man's a dinosaur. Won't fight long. Your Honor. Curtis's lawyer stood. These emails are taken out of context. Context? Whitmore's voice was sharp. The context is crystal clear, Counselor. Your client engaged in systematic fraud. He turned to Jennifer. Ms. Oakes, how many properties did Mr. Webb acquire using these methods? 7 closed, 3 in process, including the Brennan Farm. And the families? Most lost touch with each other, the elderly owners, the ones who died. I think they died of broken hearts, losing their land after working it their whole lives. Whitmore set down his papers. Mr. Webb, stand up. Curtis stood. He looked smaller now, cornered. Do you deny making these statements? Curtis's lawyer whispered to him. Curtis shook his head. Then let me be clear, Whitmore said. This court finds evidence of fraud, forgery, and elder exploitation. The quitclaim deed filed as 2024-11-892 is void. The injunction against sale or development of the Brennan property is granted. He looked at Curtis. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney for Criminal Investigation. All properties acquired through similar means will be reviewed. Curtis's face went white. Your Honor, I have investors, contracts. If I can't close these deals, You should have considered that before forging signatures. Whitmore turned to me. Brennan, do you have the original deed? Sarah handed it forward. Dated 1948, Your Honor. Unbroken chain of title from Andrew Brennan to Robert Brennan to Harold Brennan. Whitmore examined it, held it to the light. This is legitimate, and it supersedes any quitclaim deed Mr. Webb filed. He handed it back. Your property is yours, Mr. Brennan, and it stays that way. The gavel came down. Relief hit me like a wave. Virgil gripped my shoulder. Sarah was smiling, gathering papers. Curtis's lawyers were already heading for the door, leaving him standing alone at his table. His investors would pull out, his contracts would collapse, the DA would prosecute, he'd lost everything. Linda was crying in the back row. Betty sat beside her now, arm around her shoulders. When Linda looked at me, I saw it all there. Relief, shame, grief, recognition. She'd been used, but she'd also made choices. We both had. Outside, the sun was higher now, warm for December. The frost had melted off the courthouse steps, leaving them damp and dark. Tom caught up with me. 4 other families are filing complaints. Curtis is done. Sarah was on her phone, talking to the DA's office. Virgil stood by my truck, waiting. Curtis came out with his lawyers. They walked past without looking at anyone. His truck was at the far end of the lot. He climbed in, sat there for a moment, then he drove away. You won, Virgil said. Yeah. So why don't you look happy? I looked back at the courthouse. Linda and Betty were coming out, moving slowly. Linda's face was blotchy from crying. Because it cost everything else, I said. The divorce papers would come. The farm was saved, but the marriage was over. Some victories feel like losses. Virgil understood. He just nodded, got in his truck, and waited for me to follow him home. The DA filed charges 3 days after the hearing. Wire fraud, forgery, elder exploitation. Curtis Webb's face was on the evening news, walking into the courthouse with his lawyer. No comment for the cameras. 4 other families came forward. The Cartwright's daughter filed on behalf of her late father. The Vasquez family hired Sarah to represent them. The Chen's son drove in from California with boxes of documents his parents had signed. All of them following the same pattern. All of them manipulated the same way. Curtis's development company collapsed within a week. His investors pulled out. The bank called his loans. Cedar Ridge Estates, the subdivision he'd planned for my land, existed only on paper now. Blueprint dreams that would never be built. I heard through Tom that Curtis was trying to sell his house to pay for lawyers. His wife had filed for divorce. Some part of me almost felt bad for him. Almost. Linda moved to a small apartment above the bakery on Main Street. I helped her carry boxes up the narrow stairs, her clothes, her books, the photo albums she'd kept for 45 years. The apartment smelled like fresh bread and old radiator heat. I'll send the divorce papers when they're ready, she said at the door. Okay. She looked at me, really looked. I'm sorry, Hal, for all of it. I know. Curtis, he made me believe things. About you, about us, about what we deserved. She set down the box she was holding. But I made choices too. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to see it. We both made choices. Will you be all right? Out there alone? Yeah. I picked up the last box from the hallway. I've got Virgil, and Tommy, and the land. The land, she smiled, sad. Always the land. Always. I left her there, starting her new life in that small apartment with the bakery smells and the distant sound of Main Street below. Betty found me at the diner 2 weeks later. I was having coffee, sitting in my usual booth. The morning crowd was back to normal, conversation flowing, nobody staring. She slid into the seat across from me. I owe you an apology, she said. You were protecting your sister. I was wrong. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. The waitress had brought it without asking. Linda told me everything, what Curtis said to her, how he manipulated her, the things she signed without understanding. Betty's eyes were wet. I called you an abuser, in church, in front of everyone. You thought you were doing the right thing. That doesn't make it okay. She looked down. I'm sorry, Hal, truly. Apology accepted. She left a 5 on the table for her coffee and walked out. Through the window, I watched her get in her car. The sun was higher now, warmer, March coming in like a lamb. I walked the fence line on a Saturday morning. The ground had thawed completely, mud sucking at my boots. Water pooled in the low spots, reflecting blue sky. The smell of earth, real earth, not frozen anymore, filled the air. All the survey stakes were gone. I'd pulled every last one, thrown them in the trash. Orange flags in a heap, Curtis's subdivisions erased before they'd ever existed. The tractor sat in the barn waiting. I'd changed the oil the day before, replaced the air filter, greased every fitting. Spring planting was coming, and the 57 Deer was ready. My truck pulled into the driveway around 10. I heard it from the barn, heard the doors open, heard Tommy's voice. "Grandpa!" He came running across the yard, 8 years old and gap-toothed and full of energy. His mother followed more slowly, carrying a lunch basket. Mom said I could visit. Tommy crashed into me, arms around my waist. "She said the farm's safe now that you won." "Yeah, bud, it's safe." Can I drive the tractor?" "You promised." I looked at his mother. My daughter. She nodded. "Come on." I led him to the barn. The 57 Deer sat there in the morning light, green paint faded, seat worn smooth from 3 generations of Brennan men. My grandfather's tractor, my father's, mine. Tommy's now, if he wanted it. I lifted him onto the seat. His legs didn't reach the pedals. His hands barely fit around the steering wheel. "Okay," I said. "Key's here. Turn it gentle. She'll cough once or twice before she catches." He turned the key. The diesel engine coughed. Coughed again, then caught. That familiar rumble filling the barn. Black smoke puffed from the exhaust. The smell of it, diesel and history, surrounded us. "Now what?" Tommy shouted over the engine. "Now we plow." I climbed up behind him, guided his hands on the wheel. We drove out of the barn slowly, into the field where I'd already marked the rows. The plow bit into earth. Fresh soil turned over, dark and rich. Meadowlarks sang from the fence posts. The sun was warm on my face, first real warmth in months. Tommy laughed as we made the first furrow. His hands gripped the wheel like it was the most important thing in the world. Maybe it was. "Is this really going to be mine someday?" he asked. "If you want it, if you'll care for it." "I will." His voice was serious, old beyond his years. "I promise, Grandpa." Virgil was working his adjacent field, his tractor moving parallel to ours. When he saw us, he waved. I waved back. 2 brothers, 2 farms, 2 generations working the same land their grandfather had cleared with a mule and a plow. Some things change, some things don't. We finished the first row and started the second. Tommy was getting the hang of it now, steering straighter, more confident. Behind us, the turned earth stretched in a dark line. "Grandpa?" Tommy said. "Yeah?" "I'm glad you didn't sell." "Me too, bud." His mother was watching from the fence, phone out, taking pictures. Documenting this moment, her son, learning what her father had learned, what his father had learned before him. The unbroken chain, spring planting, new growth coming, the cycle beginning again, some things you fight for, and some things, the important things, you pass on. Linda drove by once while we were working, slowed down at the road, watched for a minute. I saw her through the dust, saw her face behind the windshield. Then she drove on, back to town, back to her new life. And we kept plowing. The land was ours. The future was Tommy's. And that was enough. I sit on the tractor at dawn, a week after planting, engine off, just listening. Early birds calling from the fence line, meadowlarks mostly, back from wherever they winter, soft sunlight breaking over the eastern fields, warming the air by degrees. The smell of earth, turned soil, new growth starting, fills everything. 45 years of marriage, gone. Linda signed the papers last week. Clean break, she called it. Maybe that's the right name for it. I think about what she said. About me loving the land more than I loved her. About never listening. About her feeling invisible. She wasn't wrong. I held on to this place so tight I forgot to hold on to her. Thought she'd always be there, same as the fence posts and the barn and the sunrise. Took her for granted like I took the seasons for granted. Always coming, always there. Curtis Webb exploited that, but the crack was already there. He just knew where to hit. The divorce cost me half the savings. Linda took her share, moved on. I heard she's working at the library now. Seems content. And me? I've got 180 acres, a grandson who loves tractors in mornings like this. Some men might call that winning. Spring wind moves through the bare branches, warmer than it's been in months. I rest my hand on the steering wheel, warm metal now, not cold. The seasons turn whether you're ready or not. Tommy asked me yesterday if Grandma was coming back. I told him the truth. No. But the land's still here, still ours, still waiting for him when he's ready. A man can hold his ground without holding his heart open. I learned that the hard way. But ground lasts, hearts break, and you live with both. I start the engine. There's work to do. There's always work to do. That's the point, I suppose. Some things you fight for. Some things you let go. The wisdom is knowing which is which.